Picture this: a bitterly cold December night in 1980, the streets of New York City brimming with the typical hum of life. But outside the Dakota, an elegant apartment building near Central Park, time seemed to stop. Just a few steps away from the brass doorway, John Lennon, a musical icon, lay bleeding out on the sidewalk. His killer, Mark David Chapman, stood nearby, his eyes vacant, a copy of The Catcher in the Rye clutched in his hand. Yoko Ono, Lennon's partner in art, life and love, found herself in a nightmare from which she has never truly awakened. More than 4 decades later, the pain still lingers for Yoko Ono. It's a wound that refuses to heal, a shadow that never leaves her side. In interviews, when the subject of that fateful night arises, her voice often falters, each word weighed down with the burden of loss. For Yoko, John's murder was not just the abrupt end of an era, it was the beginning of a relentless inner struggle, a grief that has consumed her life. Think of it, a love story so intertwined with the music that defined a generation, cut short in the blink of an eye. Lennon and Ono, known for their avant-garde art and the infamous bed-in for peace, had always attracted controversy. But they had weathered it all together: John's departure from the Beatles, the scorn of the press, the pressure of raising their son Sean in the public eye. Yoko was always the strong one, the woman who endured the backlash and criticism with quiet dignity. But on that cold night in December, strength could do little to protect her from the devastating loss. John Lennon was shot 4 times in the back by a man who once considered himself a fan. Mark David Chapman, seeking infamy, had transformed from an admirer to a killer, driven by a distorted sense of purpose. For Yoko, the question has always lingered: why was her beloved John taken from her in such a brutal and senseless way? And why did this man, this stranger, think he had the right to extinguish the light that John had brought into the world? The murder of John Lennon remains one of the most senseless tragedies in music history, and the motivations behind it are as perplexing as they are haunting. Chapman's fixation on Lennon grew from an obsessive resentment. He believed that Lennon, with his message of love and peace, was a hypocrite for his immense wealth. Chapman's delusions, fueled by mental instability and a desire for notoriety, led him to believe that murdering Lennon would give his own life meaning. Yet, for Yoko Ono, such explanations have never been enough. She has spent years grappling with the cruelty of it all. In the silence of their once shared home at the Dakota, she is haunted by the absence of John's voice, the echoes of the life they were meant to share. She often speaks about the moments they missed, the holidays, the small joys, the milestones in Sean's life that John never got to witness. In interviews, Yoko has confessed that her grief is like an ocean, endless and deep, with waves that crash unexpectedly. It's hard to talk about John's death, she has admitted, her voice breaking. It feels like it just happened yesterday for her. Every discussion about that night pulls her back into the trauma, reopening a wound that never truly closed. Even as the years have passed, the pain has remained a constant in Yoko's life. She has tried to move forward, continuing her work in art and activism, keeping John's legacy alive with the John Lennon Educational Tour Bus and the annual lighting of the imagined Peace Tower in Iceland. But the shadow of that night follows her. It's there in the corridors of the Dakota, where she still lives, walking past the spot where her husband fell. It's in the glances of strangers on the street, those who remember her not just as an artist, but as the widow of John Lennon. Yoko has spoken about the difficulty of being both the custodian of John's memory and a person trying to live her own life. In many ways, she has become an unwilling archivist, preserving the story of their love while struggling to make peace with the cruelty of its ending. Despite her efforts to heal, Yoko has admitted that the idea of truly moving on is impossible. "I don't think you ever really get over something like that," she once said, looking out over Central Park, a place she and John had cherished together. Think of this: the world remembers John Lennon as a visionary, a man who dreamed of peace and strummed those dreams into the world with his guitar. But Yoko remembers him as the man who held her hand when no one else would, who stood by her even as the media turned her into a scapegoat for the Beatles' breakup. She remembers their laughter, their late-night conversations, and the quiet moments when they watched the sun set over the New York skyline. Yet, even as she clings to those memories, she carries the weight of public scrutiny. The world has never quite forgiven Yoko for being the enigmatic presence in John's life, the outsider who supposedly lured him away from the Beatles' golden era. To this day, she battles against the narrative that has tried to define her as the antagonist in John's story, rather than his equal partner and muse. And then there's the constant reminder of his absence, made more bitter by the fact that Mark David Chapman, the man who stole John from her, remains alive. Yoko has opposed Chapman's parole repeatedly, believing that releasing him would only amplify the pain she has fought so hard to contain. John was a man of peace, but I don't know if I can forgive, she has confessed, a rare admission that betrays the depths of her enduring sorrow. Despite her anguish, Yoko Ono has become a symbol of resilience. She turned her grief into a vehicle for peace, using art as a medium to express the pain and hope that has defined her life. Think of the imagined Peace Tower, an ethereal beam of light that cuts through the Icelandic night sky each October, commemorating John's birthday. It's as if Yoko has found a way to keep John's spirit alive, reaching out toward the heavens with a message of love, a message that endures, even in the face of unimaginable loss. Yoko's art installations often carry the weight of her grief, abstract pieces that convey the ache of living without her soulmate. In a gallery, you might find a shattered teacup, carefully reassembled, symbolizing the fractured but unbroken connection she still feels with John. These works are her way of making sense of a world that no longer includes the man who made her believe in love. But even in her artistic achievements, the sadness is always there, lurking just beneath the surface. She has described feeling like a ship lost at sea, adrift without her captain. Yet she also acknowledges that John would want her to keep going, to find solace in their shared vision of a better world. "He wouldn't want me to be sad," she has said, a faint smile touching her lips in rare moments of reflection. Yoko Ono's story is one of love, loss, and the struggle to keep moving forward. It's a story that resonates with anyone who has ever experienced the profound ache of losing someone too soon. The years have passed, the headlines have faded, but for Yoko, the pain remains sharp, raw, and ever-present. She is a living testament to the fragility of life, a woman who carries the weight of history while yearning for the simplicity of the life she once knew. And yet she refuses to let John's light fade. Through her art, her activism, and her tireless efforts to preserve his legacy, Yoko has ensured that the world will never forget the man who sang about imagining a better world. It's a burden she never asked for, but one she bears with a quiet strength that has become her hallmark. Picture this: the sun setting over the Dakota, casting long shadows over the place where their story met its tragic end. Yoko Ono looks out at the skyline, the same view she shared with John all those years ago. And as the city pulses with life around her, she closes her eyes, imagining just for a moment that he is still beside her, that they are still dreaming together. It is a fleeting comfort, but it is enough to keep her going, one day at a time. But time is a relentless opponent, one that Yoko cannot help but wrestle with. She is now in her 90s, and the weight of her years is a constant reminder that her time to continue their shared mission is limited. And yet she pushes on, knowing that each day she keeps John's dream alive is a victory against the darkness that tried to silence him. For her, every project, every piece of art, is a small act of defiance, a refusal to let John's voice be forgotten, a promise to him that their story will not fade into history. Still, there are days when the burden of survival becomes overwhelming, when Yoko's strength falters, and the memories threaten to pull her under. She has described feeling as if she is living two lives, one for herself and one for John. It is a sentiment that carries a profound loneliness, a sense of being caught between the present and a past that refuses to let go. In these moments, Yoko retreats into the private rituals she has built for herself, small acts of remembrance that keep her connected to John. She sits by the window where they once watched the snow fall over Central Park, sipping the same tea they shared, closing her eyes and imagining that he is still there with her, his laughter echoing through the room. It's a fragile comfort, a way of filling the silence that now defines her world. But through it all, Yoko has never wavered in her belief that John's spirit remains with her, guiding her as she navigates the difficult terrain of life without him. "He's still here," she has said in interviews, her voice steady with conviction. And perhaps he is in the songs that continue to inspire new generations, in the hopeful faces of those who gather to honor his memory, and in the quiet strength of the woman who has kept his light burning. Yoko Ono's life is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, to the idea that even in the face of unimaginable loss, there is a way to keep moving forward. But it is also a story of the enduring power of love, a love that outlasted death, that continues to shape the world through the art, the activism, and the indomitable will of a woman who refuses to let go. Her story is not one of closure, for she knows there is no such thing when it comes to losing a soulmate. Instead, it is a story of carrying on, of finding a way to turn grief into a beacon, even when the night is at its darkest. And as long as Yoko Ono breathes, John Lennon's spirit will remain alive in the music, the art, and the whispered dreams that still linger between the spaces they once shared.